Welcome to this episode of the Alignment with Jenn podcast. I'm your host, Jenn, and today we are going to be talking about the 10 secrets of high value women. And these are the mindsets and the habits that high value women cultivate. And I'm really excited to talk about this episode because we're going to be talking a lot about protecting your peace and really making sure that you create a life for yourself that feels very peaceful and feels very aligned for you. And I want to open up this conversation today with a story about Dolly Parton. I absolutely love Dolly Parton. I think that she's an amazing human being. And there's this story where Elvis Presley said that he wanted to sing one of her songs. It was the song, I Will Always Love You. And he agrees to sing this song, and she's super, super excited because at the time, Elvis was like, he still is the king, right? He was super, super well-known, way more well-known than her, and it would have been really amazing for her career for him to sing one of her songs. The night before they're supposed to record the song, his manager calls her and says, Elvis will record the song if you give him half the rights to the song. And she kind of sits back and she thinks about this, and she thinks about the work, the creativity that went into writing this song. And she didn't feel right about giving Elvis half the rights to the song. She felt like it was her song. And so even though there was this massive opportunity attached to it, she knew in her soul that it wasn't right for her. So she says no. She says no to the king singing her song, which would have been amazing for her career. And the story goes that she spent the entire night crying because she was so upset at the loss of this opportunity. Now, we know Dolly goes on and builds a phenomenal career for herself without Elvis Presley singing her song. And I think this is such a perfect lesson of a high value woman. It's knowing the value that you bring and recognizing that you don't need anyone else to see that value and to support that value. He obviously saw the value, but he also wanted a piece of that. And she didn't feel comfortable giving that away. And so she saw, okay, I'll be successful regardless of if Elvis endorses my song or not. And so she followed her own intuition. She followed what felt right for her. And that's one of the secrets of a high value woman, is knowing your own value and not compromising it for anyone else. That's what I really want to talk about today. It's going to be a really important conversation about worth, about boundaries, about knowing your own value and sticking to your beliefs around that value, regardless of what other people say, regardless of what you experience. So one of the first principles of being a high value woman is creating your own definition of value. And this means not letting society decide if you feel beautiful enough, if you feel smart enough, if you feel good enough. Value is completely subjective. I've shared this analogy before in my courses as well as in the podcast, where I show two purses, right? One is a Louis Vuitton bag, which we know Louis Vuitton bags are worth around $3,000 depending on the bag. And I show this bag and then I show this plain leather bag to my clients. And I say, okay, which one of these bags is more valuable? And 90% of people will say the Louis Vuitton bag because they know it, right? It's been ascribed value. But then I say, okay, what about if I told you that this bag was made on a conveyor belt? It's pretty standard leather. It is mass produced. There's tons of these bags. But this plain leather bag is made by a small Italian leathersmith whose family has been in the business for thousands of years, maybe not thousands, we'll say hundreds of years. And it's very hand-selected leather. He spends hours and hours handcrafting this bag. Which one of these now do you believe is more valuable? Well, the Louis Vuitton bag is still sold for $3,000. The leathersmithing bag is sold for a couple $100 because the value assigned to these bags is completely subjective. It's by the choice of whoever is selling this bag. And that's the same for you. You get to decide how valuable you feel. And the thing that's magnificent about our universe is when you decide that you are more valuable, when you decide, you know what, I'm going to see my value, my inherent value, regardless of what anyone else says, that is when the world is going to reflect that back to you. The world cannot reflect back to you value that you do not see within yourself. So if you keep attracting men that don't treat you very well, That's not about those men. Those men are mirroring back to you a belief that you hold within yourself about your own value. The same is true for career opportunities. If you keep attracting career opportunities that you're like, you know what, I feel like they're underpaying me, or I feel like they're not seeing my value. Check in and see, are you actually seeing and communicating your own value first? Because that's what a high value woman does. Dolly Parton clearly communicated what she believed about her value when she didn't compromise on what she truly felt was right in order to work with Elvis Presley. The same is true for you. Where in your life are you compromising on what you believe your value is? That's principle number one. So number two, she becomes a master of meaning. So a high value woman, first, as we know, she recognizes and sees her own value, but she also makes meaning out of her life. She recognizes that anything that happens in her life, there are many different ways that she can interpret it. She can interpret it in a way that makes her feel bad, that makes her feel less than, that gives her power away to something external. Or she can interpret it in a way that enhances her value, that allows her to see the good in the situation, that allows her to see that everything is always working out for her. Because that is a skill that the high value woman has cultivated, is that she knows how to create meaning out of her life in a way that enhances her life. She doesn't allow herself to get stuck in places that don't feel good for her. So an example of this, of not being a master of meaning, might be that you don't get the job that you want. And so you take it to mean, okay, I'm not doing a good enough job. I am never going to get a job. The job market is too hard. Nobody's ever going to hire me, right? These are all negative meanings that even just saying them, you can feel that it steals your energy, right? Or you can choose to be the master of meaning and say, okay, you know what? I recognize that that opportunity wasn't the one that's for me. And I know that the right opportunity is coming for me. And I know that I have incredible skills, and I'll continue to even enhance my skills to become the perfect match for the job that I want to create for myself. Both of those are the exact same situation, but they are very different meanings. We create the meaning in our lives. Tony Robbins always says that the most powerful skill you can cultivate is becoming a master of meaning, because the more that you are able to master what you make your life mean, the less that you are going to be at the whim of circumstances. It allows you to become unstoppable, because when we are at the whim of external circumstances and we're constantly seeing negative meanings or unhelpful meanings in our circumstances, we are constantly depleting our own energy and our own life force. But the more that we recognize that, you know what? Every single situation, whether it's good or bad, there's something of value that I can take from that situation. There's something that I can learn that can enhance my evolution as a soul. And I'm happy to learn that. And then I know on the other side, I'm going to be on a little bit higher of a podium. I'm going to be a little bit more evolved. And I know from that place, I'm going to attract even more powerful and excellent things into my life. That is what we want to do. We want to master the meaning that we create in our lives. Number three, and this is one that I think is difficult for a lot of people. A high value woman has strong boundaries. She recognizes that she is of value, right? Does a $50,000 diamond necklace just sit on a shelf and there's no security, there's no locks? It's just anybody can go up to that $50,000 necklace? No. At Target, those $12 necklaces, anybody can go up to them, right? People can shoplift those $12 necklaces because they're not that valuable, right? Things of value are protected. That's what boundaries do. They protect something of value. When you begin to recognize your own value, more people are going to want to be around you. More people are going to reach out to you. More people are going to be interested in being in your energy. You are going to have boundaries in order to protect that, in order to keep your energy high vibrational. I am really, really big about, if something feels like it's going to deplete my energy, I'm not going to do it. Now, there's certain things like going to the DMV, right, that you're probably just going to have to do that are not necessarily energy giving. But again, it's about the meaning you assign to it. But if there's certain people I spend time with, if there's certain television shows, if there's certain environments that I know deplete my energy, or even if it's, I've made a commitment to, let's say, spend a Sunday with someone and I feel really, really depleted, I'm probably going to change that plan. I'm okay with that because I know that me going into that environment from a depleted place isn't good for either of us. Right? And so you want to recognize the boundaries that you set for yourself. Boundaries are saying no to things, saying yes to things. It really depends on what it is. Part of also, I think the difficult part of having boundaries for a lot of women is we fear disappointing other people, right? We fear that they won't like us. We fear that they won't be as interested in us. We fear that we will hurt them if we say no. But that goes back to recognizing that you can't show up as your full, vibrant self if you don't protect what is valuable, which is your energy, your frequency, your vibration. And so if you're always saying yes to things, you're always overgiving is the opposite of having boundaries, you are going to struggle to feel like a high value version of you. So we want to create those boundaries. And for you, what I'd really like for you to do is kind of think about your life. Where can you create more boundaries for yourself, right? Where can you say no to things that you know are depleting your energy? Because the thing is, we think that saying yes to something is just like, oh, okay, you know what? I'll just spend this time doing something that I don't necessarily want to do because I don't want to let this person down or I don't want to make them upset. But when you say yes to something you don't want to do, you are also saying no to something that could be better for you. There's always an opportunity cost in those moments. It also comes down to recognizing that when you are really congruent with your own decisions, with who you are, when you are really aligned in who you are, you recognize you're not responsible for other people's emotions. So you saying no, I don't want to do that. You're not responsible for their emotional response. They can be upset, they can be sad that they don't get to spend that time with you, but you have to recognize that you are taking care of what's valuable. You are protecting yourself. I think that as women, this is especially challenging for a lot of women. I get on so many calls and people tell me that one of their biggest regrets is that they feel like they just don't prioritize themselves. They do things for everyone else except for themselves. That is weak boundaries. Part of the purpose of boundaries is to take care of yourself so that way you can give from a full cup. We cannot give fully from an empty cup. And I think if you really think about it, the people that you love don't want you to do that. The people that love you don't want you to do that. And I think there's many different ways. We could do an entire episode on boundaries. If you would be interested in that, comment on this episode and let me know. But recognizing that your boundaries are what keeps you from feeling resentful, what keeps you from feeling drained, what keeps you from diminishing your health, from diminishing your own goals. We have to have boundaries in order to achieve the life that we want. It is necessary. Every single successful person has actually strong boundaries. Think about even like a celebrity, right? What is a security guard? That's a physical boundary. That's saying, no, you cannot come into my personal bubble. If they didn't have that, it would be a hot mess. So recognizing that every single person, the more successful you get, the more boundaries you are going to have with yourself and with other people. There's this quote from Taylor Swift where she talks about your energy being a very powerful asset. I can't remember the exact quote, but it's very true. Right? And without boundaries, that energy becomes low quality. Boundaries keep your energy high quality. Number 4, and this is going to be a little bit of an uncomfortable one for some people, but she puts herself first. This goes back to having boundaries. Now, you can say that this is selfish. That's what a lot of people, and I think that's what society wants us to think. But the truth is that you have to put yourself first in order to be able to show up fully for the other people in your life. If you are constantly putting other people in your life, whether it's your significant other, whether it's your children, whether it's your career, whether it's your boss, when you're putting other people before your own needs, you are not only diminishing your health, diminishing your happiness, you are diminishing even that relationship with that person because you're not able to show up fully, but you are also unconsciously diminishing your relationship with yourself. Because when we put another person first, what we're telling our unconscious mind is, okay, that person's needs are more important than me. That person's desires are more important than my own. And so it's important that we make sure that we communicate to our unconscious mind that we value ourselves. Because when we don't, it creates a lot of internal conflict. And what I've seen with my clients is it also creates a lot of lack of self-trust. When we're always putting other people first, it's really hard for our unconscious mind to trust ourselves. So I'll give you an example of this. Let's say that I am always prioritizing the needs of my clients over myself, which I don't do. I prioritize my own needs because I know that for me to show up fully for my clients, for the people that I serve, I have to be a strong vessel, and I can't do that if I'm putting them first. But let's say in a hypothetical situation, I'm putting them first. So I'm spending all these hours, I'm spending all my time just devoting to making sure that every single need of my clients is met, which is also not my responsibility. But let's just say in this scenario, my boundaryless scenario, what is going to happen is my unconscious mind is going to start to lose trust in me because it's going to say, okay, well, she says that she wants to exercise and eat healthy and care for herself, but she never shows up for that because she's always putting her clients first. And so I don't really trust her when she wants to go after a bigger goal because she's not showing up for herself in these small ways, right? It erodes your relationship with yourself. Your relationship with yourself is so extremely important. And the more that you value yourself and you show it through your thoughts, words, and actions, the more that other people are going to value you, the more that all of your relationships are going to thrive. There's this thing on social media where it talks about, I see this over and over, where it says that women who get really amazing men are typically selfish. And it's not that they're selfish. None of this is selfish. It's just that they're putting themselves first. Because when you put yourself first, you have a strong vessel to give from. You show up in full potency when you're with that person. And I know this is much more difficult, right? If you're a new mother or even a mother in general, but I encourage you to think of ways where you can prioritize yourself regardless of your life circumstance, regardless of that, because I promise you it's going to pay off. Number 5, she cleans up her inputs. So a high value woman is very thoughtful about what is coming into her energy field, whether that's through the conversations she's having, the TV shows or the audiobooks or the podcast she's listening to, whether that's through her friendships, whether that's through her social media feed, whether that's the food that she's putting into her body, the environments she's putting herself in. The more that you clean up these things, the more that you start to create that identity of a high value woman, right? If you go onto social media and all you see are negative things or the news or things that make you feel yucky, you're lowering your vibration. You're lowering your ability to show up as that fullest expression of yourself. I am really, really particular about what I put into my mind, right? Sometimes there's this Instagram channel, I think it's Mr. Ballin. He has these videos that are stories, but they're typically pretty dark stories, right? They're true crime or something, but I get sucked into them when they come on my feed. And I notice as soon as I watch those, I don't feel as good. I don't sleep as well because I'm scared, right? Recognizing that one small 30-second or a minute input of a reel can have an impact on your sleep, which can have an impact on your next day. I've talked about this before. I call it the cascade effect. Nothing in your life is in isolation. It's all connected. And so the more that you start to realize that by cleaning up what you're allowing to enter your field, the more that powerful you're going to be. It goes back to the necklace example, right? The Target necklace, anybody can enter its field because it's not that valuable. But that beautiful diamond necklace, not everyone gets to enter its field. It has very particular inputs because it's valuable, right? You're the diamond necklace. You're not the $12 necklace at Target. Not that there's anything wrong with those necklaces, right? I love those necklaces, but we're talking about value. Okay. This is a big one. Number 6, she pauses before she reacts. She has equanimity. She is able to see a situation, right? And she's not just like this like little reactive teddy bear where she's blowing in the wind at whatever happens to her. She has this inner strength. She has this ability to say, okay, you know what? That thing that my husband just said to me hurt my feelings. And so instead of lashing out at him and damaging our relationship, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to process it. And I'm going to respond when I don't feel like my inner child is super lit up, right? Because that's not good for him. That's not good for me. That's not good for our relationship. So I want you to really think about where in your life do you struggle to have that pause, right? Where do you struggle to pause before you react? And how can you practice, right? Pick one scenario where you struggle to pause before you react and begin to practice that. That moment between stimulus and response is your moment of choice. That's when you get to choose who you are, right? Because there's always going to be challenging stimuli, whether it's your internal thoughts or an external stimuli. And there's always going to be a moment, even if it's a split second, where you get to choose how you respond. So who are you is determined in that moment of you choosing how you want to respond. So I want you to think that, because that pause is where your power sits. Ooh, I like that. I like that one. That's a good one. Your pause is where your power sits. The more that you can pause and say, you know what? I want to be a loving partner, so I'm going to choose how I respond in a different way. Man, if every person in the world had this skill, I think that we might have world peace. The next one, she lives with intentionality. So intentionality is living with purpose. It's where you say, I'm not going to just be reacting to my life. I'm not just going to be at the whim of what's happening in my life. I'm going to choose to be the conscious creator of my life and act with intentionality. So what does that mean? It means having clear goals for yourself. It means having a clear destination where you want to be. It means instead of just always putting out fires in your job, it means saying, you know what? I want to be in this place in 1 to 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And so I'm going to start acting in alignment with that now. Intentionality is being that version that you want to be now to create the life that you want. The more intentional I am with my life, with my energy, with my time, the more high quality and amazing my life becomes. And one thing that one of my spiritual teachers said is that he only ever has 3 focus areas in his life. So it could be health, your relationship, your career, maybe that's your 3, right? And that's all that you focus on at one time. And keeping your focal points in your life very clear and very specific, rather than being like, okay, I'm going to do this and 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 I'm going to do this. Because what happens is you move maybe an inch, maybe an inch, maybe an inch in each, instead of moving a foot and a foot and a foot. Intentionality is, where am I putting my energy? Because energy follows intention. So the more purpose, the more clarity you have on what you want to create in your life, the more that your energy is able to be channeled in a really powerful way, in a really clear, powerful way. And this is something that I work on with my clients inside of my program, where we get really clear on who do you want to be and how do you want to create that life, and what challenges or fears do you need to clear out that may be preventing you from really living as that best version of you. My purpose, I believe, is helping other women live in alignment and live their purpose. So if you're interested in learning more about that and learning more about my coaching, you can send me the word podcast on Instagram. My Instagram is @alignmentwithjen, and I'll send you this short little 5-minute video about that. You can see if it aligns for you. Okay, so now we've got number 8. She cleans up her outputs. So what do I mean by that? Words, thoughts, and actions are your outputs. So our words are a creative force. This is something that has been talked about in the Bible. It's been talked about for thousands of years, that our words create our reality, our thoughts and our words. And the way that it was explained to me by a different spiritual teacher, Master Ko, is that our thoughts are like the lightest form of our creation, right? It starts as a thought and then it becomes our words. We start to talk about it. And that's when it becomes a little more real. And then it becomes more physicalized when we put action behind it. And that's really like the manifestation process, is from thoughts to words to actions. And each of them becoming more and more physical, where we can start to see them in the physical world. The more that you clean up your outputs, right? What are you talking about? Are you a complainer? Are you a gossiper? I promise you, if you complain and you gossip a lot and you just take those out, you're going to manifest something amazing, because your words are energy. The way I think about my words is like little puffs of colored smoke. I know that sounds really weird, but when I'm speaking negatively, I imagine this like dark smoke coming out of my mouth. When I'm speaking positively, I imagine like pink, pretty smoke coming out of my mouth, because I like pink, right? And it's a love color. So the more that you think about it as this actual creative energy, the more that you are going to change the quality of your life. So what are your outputs, right? Are you wasting a lot of your time? Are you wasting a lot of your energy? Are you speaking negatively about yourself, speaking negatively about others? What's your internal dialogue? One of the fastest ways to improve your confidence is to start just changing your internal dialogue. I saw this reel the other day, and gosh, I wish I remembered the guy in it. He's a very interesting dude. And he talks about how he used to be very afraid of public speaking. And he talks about also how this is backed by neuroscience. And he started writing every single day. He said for a week, for about 10 minutes every day, he would write, I love public speaking. I love public speaking. I'm so good at public speaking. For 10 minutes, he would just write about that. Same sentences over and over. And he said by the end of the week, he's like, I wasn't afraid of it. That's because he's changing those neural pathways, but he's also changing his outputs. He's changing what he's believing. He's changing what his unconscious believes. When you write, I oftentimes imagine when I write, I'm literally like writing on my brain what I want to believe. This is why scripting is a really powerful practice. So noticing your outputs. What are you writing? What are you thinking? What are you speaking? What are you doing? And how can you elevate those? Because a high value woman is intentional about her outputs. You see how all of these come together? Then we've got number 9. She stops over-explaining and justifying. She recognizes that she doesn't necessarily need to logically explain everything to everyone. If something doesn't feel right for her, that's okay. She doesn't have to explain 10 steps of why it's not right for her. She just says, no, I don't want to do it. And if they say why, well, I don't know. I just don't. I'm not interested in doing that. You don't have to explain everything to everyone. It takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of time to explain yourself to everyone. And honestly, some people are just never going to get it. So stop feeling the need that everything that you do needs to be explained, because sometimes you just get to go with your own intuition. I think also part of the over-explaining comes from this need to get validation from someone else. And I think that's really the issue with it, is that we often will over-explain because we will want someone to agree with us. We will want them to say, okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. You should do that. When the truth is that you should give yourself that permission. You shouldn't need it from someone else, because you should be so coherent with who you are and trusting of yourself. Right? So recognizing that you don't have to explain everything to everyone. Those are, I guess there was 9 instead of 10. So those are the secrets of the high value woman. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Please follow the podcast if you found this valuable. And if you'd like to learn more about my coaching, you can send me that word podcast on Instagram at Alignment with Jenn. It has been a joy to be with you here, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.